to 9 p.m. And for that evening, parking is on the right side of the street only, or park on Lawrence Lane. That information is listed in the folder you received and also online. Officiating this afternoon is Rabbi Seth Limmer.
L'kol zman ve'et, l'chol chefetz tachat hashamayim, et laledet ve'et lamut. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. We gather today to speak, to bear witness, to begin to remember and assemble the legacy of Sheldon Pete Pollack. In this chapel, we will hear from his closest family, and then in days of Shiva and phone calls and conversations to come, all of us will have the opportunities to hear and share stories about Pete, just as we share words of comfort with his family, with Marv and his husband Barry, Sandy, her best friend Caryn, Rachel, Melissa and Rotem, Molly and Hudson, and maybe just to play games and to make great grandkids Shai, Bar, and Liv smile and play. I invite everyone to turn in their program and read together the words of the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the path of for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. An ancient tale from our Talmud tells that two ships were once seen near land. One of them was leaving the harbor and the other was coming into it. Everyone was cheering the outgoing ship, giving it a hearty send-off. But almost no one noticed the ship coming back into port. The sage standing nearby offered an explanation of the people's reaction. "Rejoice not," the sage said, "over the ship that sets out to sea, for you know not what destiny awaits it, what storms it may encounter, what dangers lurk before it. Rejoice rather over the ship that has reached port safely and brought back all its passengers in peace. It is the way of the world that when a human being is born, all rejoice, and when he dies, all sorrow. It should be the other way around," says the sage. "No one can tell what troubles await a developing child on its journey through life. But when a man has lived life well and dies in peace, all should rejoice, for he has completed his journey. He's completed his journey successfully and departs from the world with the impenetrable crown of a good name. I thought of this story for two reasons. The first is that hearing everything I did about Pete, he definitely gives us reason today to rejoice for a life most fully lived, filled with showering love, affection on those he loved. And I also share that story because I love the fact that he lives this world as well with the unique case of having the imperishable crown of a good name, because he has two names. Because he has been Pete to so many, including those most dear to him for 40 years, and also Sheldon, but always remaining the same incredible, stalwart, smile-bringing mensch of a human being to many. When I had the chance to sit and hear from Pete's family about him, one theme was clear and came up in exactly 4 words from Marv. Pete was a mensch. Sandy said, the most important thing to me is that everyone that's joining us at the ceremony service gets a sense of all the wonderful things that Pete did and his personality, and how everybody just loved being with him. Or as Melissa put the same thought in different words, he was the absolute best man in the entire world. Marv reflected the thing that was remarkable about Pete's childhood is that his mother came from a family of 13 children, and most of those families lived in the neighborhood. Julius Ettelson and his brothers came from Lithuania and bought the real estate at the corner of Belmont and Broadway, and they all kind of grew up in the shtetl, Marv explained. Sheldon, before he was Pete, had 4 cousins in his kindergarten class. They all played ball together against the brick wall of the buildings. They'd assumed the names of their favorite baseball players. They were 1 block from the lake, and they all went to the Nettlehorst School, still standing. They all stayed close. When they got married, they had the Cousins Club, effectively remaining the social life for all of them. And in Chicago, Pete is the last survivor. In New Mexico, Jean Grey is the last of this incredibly close generation. Sheldon went to Lakeview High School, did some work at the University of Illinois at Navy Pier, but contrary to newspaper reports, we're pretty sure he did not graduate with a diploma because he was called by J.O. Pollack and Company, the company founded by his grandfather Joseph, and at that time run by Ralph, a manufacturer jewelry company making fraternity and sorority rings and pins, nursing pins. It was a family endeavor. Arlene wound up working there too. Later on in life, Pete became chairman in charge of manufacturing and operations. Pete, Sheldon, I think Sheldon at the time, met Arlene at Temple Emmanuel up on Aldine, and they were married in 1950. And then Sheldon promptly left for the Army, stationed in Savannah, Georgia during the Korean War. And then back to Chicago, they settled in the family building at 612 West Belmont, or as Marv said, where most of my generation was conceived and born. Imagine that happening today. Marv arrived in 1953, and then the family moved to Elmdale, and Sandy arrived in 1955. If you're painting a picture of family, they went from the Ettelson shtetl of Elmdale and lived there for 12 years until moving to Wilmette. So we had the whole wonderful family time together, including great-grandmothers. In Wilmette House from 1965 to 1998-ish, when they moved to Northbrook, really to be nearer to Sandy, Rachel, and Melissa. It was around this time that the nickname Pete came into the picture. Friendly to everyone at restaurants and hotels, Mr. Sheldon, Mr. Pollack, he always found people who knew him and loved him. Until he was 80 years old, he played racquetball in the morning a few days a week. A creature of habit, he would drive downtown for a haircut, go to the same dentist, and until he learned that he had high cholesterol, seemingly always had the same meal of filet mignon and a sweet potato at every restaurant. Melissa shared that her vision of her grandparents is that they did not miss a thing. They were there for every event, They taught what family meant. They had Sunday dinner all the time, going on lots of trips, including taking everyone to Aruba, Pete's favorite place. He loved to play dice. Evidently, you couldn't call it craps because he didn't swear, and hopefully I didn't just swear calling it craps. And even on those trips, he was always looking out for the family. As Melissa shared, there was never a moment we didn't feel cared for by Pete and Arlene. Even when he was in the basement, working seriously at this point, no longer at the manufacturing company, but trading options in the basement, he was happy to have the grandkids there, engaging them in conversation, stealing candy from the candy dish, grabbing lunch, having them sit next to him while he worked. Caryn, Sandy's best friend, became a very big part of Pete's life. After Arlene died, Caryn took over preparing the Sunday dinners for family, always making sure that they had everything that Pete liked, from the salad to the meat to the sweet potato, at this point all gluten-free. Caryn was a very big part of Pete's life and told Sandy how much she cherishes how good he was to her. And the feeling, I am told, was mutual. Later in life, Beverly, a former neighbor, came into the scene. They connected after Arlene died and were together for 12 years and made each other happy. It was easy. They had a joking rapport and made each other laugh, and it was nice for them to have each other. Pete took care of her too, as she came to her end in 2024. At senior living, Pete was loved and cherished. He was particularly close with an aide, Clara, who was incredibly dedicated, with whom he had a curious ritual of saying goodbye. You can ask Sandy for the details. It's very complicated. And on the last day, when everybody realized that the end was near, there was a parade of people that came to say goodbye. And every one of them to a T agreed that he was the best man, and they wished that all their patients were like Pete. Marv, you said that the focus on family is so fitting for Pete because Pete was a provider. After the company, his focus on training was so intense because his biggest concern in coming to stop working was who's going to provide for the family. Melissa, you said Grandpa was always there looking for us, so happy all the time, always wanted to help. And everyone's, like your friends, they all knew him as Pete, and they all said he was just the best man, so friendly, so sweet. And it should come out now that Pete evidently always gave other people nicknames, including Rachel and Melissa's dad, Alan, who I only know as Backseat Alan, and Sheldon, because he didn't like to curse, would always say, for peace sake, or cry Pete, and Backseat Alan gave him the name Pete, and it stuck for over 40 years. Sandy, you shared that a lot of your friends who know your dad said how wonderful a man he was, and it just permeated through everyone's feelings. And Mark, as I began, I will end. You said my dad was a mensch. Everyone who met him said the same things, and the amount of people in our life who know him in these past few days, they still are. They keep on speaking to the wonderful man that Pete was. Those are just the broad strokes of Pete's life, and now I'm going to invite up members of his family to share with you their own memories, starting first with Marv.
On behalf of our family, I'd like to thank you all for coming, especially those of you who came from a long distance, as we celebrate the life of Sheldon Pollack. Our world has changed. What my sister and I, our whole family, have known our entire lives will never be the same. Our father seemed eternal. He was always there. He was zestfully living his life, yet was thoroughly intertwined with ours. He was a quiet man who didn't live quietly. He never spoke loudly, but his actions spoke loudly for him. He's a man who never swore knowingly. Many years ago, a friend informed him that the Yiddish term that he used frequently was actually a swear word. He was mortified. I never heard him use it again. Something that I should explain, which we're all kind of aware of, is my dad's nickname, Pete. Nicknames were big with my dad. He assigned at least one to everyone in the family and to most of his friends. Ellyn Siegal gets credit for nicknaming him. Ellyn realized that everyone in the family had a nickname except for Pete. And since my dad never swore, his strongest expletive was Cry Pete. That's where Pete came from. It just seemed to fit. Sheldon and Dad seemed too formal. He was much cooler as Pete. In thinking about his life, I realized there are three themes. One is his connection to people. Second was his compassion for his family. And third, his pride and skill in his passions. Let me describe some observations on his connection with people. Pete was a people person. He could walk up to anyone and just start chatting. He was always sincere with no artifice whatsoever. Whether it was a service person or another resident of his building, he charmed them, he kidded them, and he made an instant friend. One night he joined me at a business dinner. He didn't know a person in that room. We were seated at the table with the evening's speaker, who was the columnist George Will from the Washington Post. Pete didn't know who George Will was, but ended up seated right next to him. And as the evening unfolded, the two were in rapt conversation. I think they talked primarily about the Cubs and old-time baseball, but they both seemed to enjoy the conversation and were totally involved. One summer night before COVID, we were having a Sunday dinner with the whole family at Batiste in Wilmette. I pointed out to Pete that Tom Ricketts, owner of the Chicago Cubs, had just walked by on the way to his table. Tom is the son of Joe Ricketts, who was the founder of First Omaha Securities, who was Pete's longtime stockbroker. Back when Pete started doing his options trading, he'd have to call Joe and talk to him every day because you had to place your orders over the phone. Well, when Pete realized that Joe Ricketts' son was at the next table over, he got up and went and talked to Tom Ricketts. And it wasn't just a 3-minute, hey, I knew your dad conversation. They were going for 10 or 15 minutes until I went over and brought him back. He wasn't a fawning fan. He just connected with Tom as he had with George Will. And friends are a huge part of his life. He had his men's club friends, his racquetball friends, his poker friends, his travel buddies, and tons that I don't even know about. They enriched his life, and I'm sure they all had nicknames. Pete was very social at the independent and assisted living facilities where he spent his final years. He especially charmed the ladies, teasing and kidding them. It wasn't unusual to walk into the lobby and find him seated in a circle of a half dozen friends. Ultimately, my lasting memory of Pete is that his profound honesty and interest in helping others. I never heard him lie. He taught Sandy and me from an early age that it was never worth lying, that you usually would be found out and have to work really hard to make things right. He was also instinctively helpful. He was usually the last one to leave a party to make sure everyone had a ride home, and he'd offer anybody who wanted one a ride. He loved driving. The second theme is his compassion for his family, and family were the center of his world. It started out that way. His mother, Blanche, of the Ettelson family, had 10 siblings who in turn had 13 kids, all of whom grew up at Belmont and Broadway. They were the gang of cousins. As our cousin Mimi Gavigan wrote me this morning, there were 4 Ettelson first cousins in Pete's kindergarten class at Nettlehorst. The kids played together. They were in and out of each other's houses. They had massive family picnics in the forest preserves. And we have films of large family seders at the Covenant Club in the early 1950s. Later, Passover was observed at our house with the Isaacs family every year, featuring the fruit compote Roz would bring in her bright yellow kettle. The gang of cousins stuck together, many living as newlyweds in the building at Belmont and Broadway. Their cousins club was a social staple until geography made it harder. Ultimately, they had a day after Thanksgiving Ettelson family party that lasted well into this century, and it's the way that I know most of the cousins of my generation. Pete was the second to last surviving member of the gang of cousins, only Jean Gray in New Mexico, who will be 95 in March. March is on. She sends her regards to the family here. Work was a family affair too. Pete's whole career was at Gerald Pollack, a jewelry company founded by his grandfather in 1900. It was initially run by J.O. then by his father, Ralph, whose nickname was Chief, and then by my dad and his brother, Jerry, whose nickname was Juji. My mom worked there running the fraternity division, and my grandmother worked there running the hospital division. So it went until the business was sold in the 1990s. In the process, he created a diverse, happy community of loyal employees who stayed for a long, long time, and they gave him a touching scrapbook when he retired, full of fond memories. Stepping back to the late 1940s, my dad and mom met, my mom Arlene, whose nickname was Friendly. They met at Temple Emmanuel. They married in 1950, lived in a small apartment in Winthrop before Pete shipped off to the Army. When they came back, they moved into the family building on Belmont and Broadway, and then we moved to Edgewater, where my mother's parents lived, and Sandy arrived. Always there was family around. On Friday night, there was dinner with the Pollacks. Sunday dinners with the Hutchbergers, my mother's family. These weekly dinners featured 4 generations, ranging from us kids through 2 great-grandmothers. The nearly 75-year tradition of Sunday dinners has been foundational in our family. Pete would make those dinners fun for the grandkids by bringing them puzzles to solve. Pete was always a presence, often sitting at the head of the table, beaming at his family, the patriarch drinking in the interactions of the clan. Let's focus for a minute on the love of Pete's life, our mom, Arlene. Theirs was a love affair for the ages. They were great partners, totally supported each other, and provided great role models for us, demonstrating a stable, loving relationship. They traveled together, worked together, actively participated in the temple together, entertained friends together, and raised their kids and helped with Sandy's kids together. They were married for 59 years, cut short by an illness during which Pete couldn't have been more attentive. I remember flying down to Aruba the day after my mom died to be with him. I was struck by his focus on my mother and her suffering and her loss of the life she loved. He never expressed pity for himself or talked about his great loss. It was all about her. Pete's next chapter started sooner than anyone expected, but we were overjoyed when he was introduced to Beverly Didech shortly after our mom passed away. Beverly was a widowed neighbor living just 3 blocks away from him. He and Beverly had fun from the start and made a great team. Pete became fully integrated in the Didech family and Beverly in ours. They were close for 12 years until a stroke felled Beverly and dementia slowed Pete. They moved to different assisted living situations, but their time together gave them a dozen years of enjoyment and companionship. Finally, let's look at Pete's passions. Pete was a man of simple taste. He was not an acquirer of anything that I knew of except maybe licorice. He wasn't into cars or wine or art, but he did like to travel, especially if the destination included a casino. His interest in gambling seemed to be a little contradictory for a man who led a cautious, thrifty life. He lived by and instilled in his family the belief that money was for saving, not for spending. He firmly believed in providing for the education and future endeavors of his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. We are sincerely grateful for his thoughtfulness and generosity. Chicago sports teams were also his passion. He followed the Cubs from an early age. Because of their inability to field a winning team, he had a nickname for them that I won't repeat here. His special attachment was to the Chicago Blackhawks. He was a season ticket holder for many years. Going to the Hawks game on our birthdays was our special treat. Over the years, Pete got to know the general manager, Tommy Ivan, and his wife, and sat with them at games and traveled together. For many years, Gerald Pollack provided the team rings for the Hawks. And on to the stock market. Pete and the market were inseparable. At Gerald Pollack, he kept a small black TV tuned to the stock ticker all day long. He continued this after he retired and became a full-time day trader. He avoided any appointments or distractions during trading hours. He was an early student of the newly introduced exchange-traded put and call options in the early 1970s and developed a clear, conservative trading system. Like the casino, it seemed to scratch his itch for risk and drama, but it came to be more a way for him to provide for his family. Early on, he had everyone in the family invest in a partnership for which he would trade options. Even the partnership had a nickname. In the months when he made a profit, he would write out checks to each partner and give Rachel or Melissa the envelopes to deliver at Sunday dinner. except he wouldn't write names on the envelopes. He made up cryptic codes that the delivery person had to crack. It was another example of his playfulness. When it came time to give up trading because dementia was interfering with his concentration, his concern wasn't as much about how he would fill his days as how he would support his family, all of whom happened to be gainfully employed. I could go on and talk about his fascination with fire trucks and fires. He knew the numbers of all the fire stations in the city. I remember going to see fires in progress with him when I was young. Every time he heard a siren, he seemed eager to hop in the car and follow. Pete had a strong patriotic streak. He was proud of his military service. He served on the local draft board for several years and the local postal council as well. During the last election before he moved to Florida, I asked him to vote as a friend of mine was in a tight aldermanic race. When I went to pick him up to go vote, he appeared in full dress, coat, tie, and his Gerald Pollack tie clasp that he's wearing today. I'll share one more passion that Pete developed late in life. He and Beverly and a few of their friends would meet at Costco in Glenview for lunch every Saturday. After lunch, Pete would go into the store with a shopping cart and help reshelve items people had discarded from their carts in the wrong sections. It interfered with his sense of order to see so many items out of place, especially things from the freezer. After a while, the store management noticed what he was doing and allowed him to be their volunteer 90-year-old stock boy. I'll close by expressing my profound gratitude, Pete, for your guidance, for your example, for your generosity, your kindness, your humor, and your embrace of my family. Barry, Molly, and Hudson join me in expressing our love for you and gratitude for all that you have given us. We're thankful that you've been part of our lives for so long and that you can now once again be with your beloved Arlene. Amen.
Sandy?
Mine definitely won't be as long as that one. He sort of covered everything, but my father, does it work? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Okay, there you go. All right. My father was not someone who needed to be the loudest person in the room. He didn't look for attention or praise, but his presence was steady. We always knew that he was there. He showed his love not through big speeches, but through consistency, responsibility, and simply showing up over and over again. He was a man who took care of his family. That was always his priority. He believed in doing the right thing and hardworking and following through on what you said you would do. Those values shaped how he lived his life, and whether he realized it or not, they shaped mine also. My dad had his own way of connecting with people. He could be quiet, but when he spoke, it mattered. He paid attention. He noticed things, especially if there was a crumb on your face or something. And if you were someone he cared about, you felt it in a way. He looked out for you and made sure you were okay. As a father, he taught by example. He showed me what responsibility looks like. He showed me resilience. And he showed me that love doesn't always have to be spoken to be real and deeply felt. Like all of us, he wasn't perfect, but he was human, and he was real. And the love he had for his family was constant, and that is what I will carry with me. Losing him leaves a space that cannot be filled, but also leaves a legacy of values, lessons, and quiet strength that will stay with me always. I'm grateful for the time we had, for everything he gave, and for the father that he was. I miss him deeply, and I will continue to honor him by carrying forward the things he taught me, whether he knew he was teaching them or not. I love you, Pete.
Rachel and Melissa?
Pete was the best man and the best grandpa. I know everybody probably feels this way about their grandpa, but truly he was ours. From the very beginning, he made us feel special, loved, and like being with him was the safest and happiest place to be. Some of my earliest memories with him are playing going to work. I'd wear his tie, carry my Grams' brown purse, and bring along my baby doll. He never rushed us, never laughed at us. He was always all in. If you wanted to play, he was there, tie and all. Pete also had a very prominent outie belly button, and my sister and I were absolutely obsessed with it. We would press it every chance we got, and every single time he'd make a and with a laughing sound. It never got old to us, and somehow it never got old to him either. That was Pete, patient, playful, and always happy to make us laugh. Starting when I was 6 years old, Pete took us to Las Vegas every Memorial Day. He had this rule where he told us to walk around the casino with our heads down and see what we could find on the ground. Anything we found, he promised to double. One year, I found a $100 chip, which I had to give back to the casino, unfortunately. Pete felt so bad that I couldn't keep it that he doubled it anyway. That was him, generous to his core, especially when it came to us. I was just in Las Vegas last week, and I found 4 pennies on the ground. When I saw him for the last time, I told him what I found and asked if he would be doubled. His eyes lit up immediately, and that moment means everything to me now. Pete and my Grams also took us on spring break all through junior high and high school, and our favorite place was always Aruba. One of my favorite memories is renting a car there that had no power steering and a gear shifter in the center console. Pete was used to the old school shifters, so every time he went to change gears, he actually would turn on the windshield wipers instead. He would grab the steering wheel and go, "Damn this car!" We'd all be laughing so hard. It was pure Pete, funny, real, and completely unforgettable. All of my friends loved him, and he loved them right back. He was warm, charming, respectful, funny, and such a jokester. He made everyone feel welcome and important just by being himself. Pete wasn't just my grandpa, he was my hero, my example, and one of the best people I've ever known. I will miss him forever and ever, but I am so lucky that I've had him for 41 years and to carry all these memories with me for the rest of my life.
Let me switch with you. Okay. When I say I was the luckiest girl in the world to have you as my grandpa, I truly mean it. You were simply the best. Everyone knew it. Even my friends knew it. Even the waiters and the tower girl in Aruba knew it. Everyone knew it. We were truly blessed. My grandpa taught me so many lessons from a very little girl. I was lucky enough to have him in my life for 39 years and never stopped teaching me until the day he died. Let me share a few. He taught me the importance of family. Every Sunday night we were together, and it never felt like an obligation. He would wait for us by the door and come out and greet us as if he hadn't seen us in weeks. The excitement was mutual. He taught me how to be a salesperson at the Hyatt in Aruba. I said, "Pete, they won't let us go on the water slides because we don't have a room number since we're staying at the Marriott." He looked at me and he said, "Give them your room number and do not say another word." I looked at him dumbfounded, and he looked at me and said, "You have a room number, right?" Nonetheless, Rachel and I got to enjoy the water slides at the Hyatt. He taught me to travel and have fun. The endless trips to Aruba, Las Vegas, Lake Tahoe, just to name a few. On my 21st birthday, he surprised me with tickets to Celine Dion, my favorite singer. Grandma, Mom, Rachel, and I went. And of course, he went to play, what he liked to call dice, also known as craps. He taught me to love candy. I used to visit him at his jewelry factory, and we would eat the chuckles out of the vending machine, or sneak into Grandma's candy cabinet and eat orange slices and jelly beans together in the basement so Grandma wouldn't catch us. Sometimes he would catch me going in for more, and he would pretend to be like Grandma and say, "Get out of there," and we would both just laugh. He taught me how to work hard, as he was the hardest worker I knew. Even after his 40-plus year at his jewelry factory, he retired to work even harder, trading options. He was so proud of me in my real estate career. Every time I told him about another sale, he lit up with excitement as if it was my first. He saved every marketing material with my face on it and had it on his table for everyone to see as they first walked in his door. He was my biggest cheerleader. He taught me how to be strong and never give up. Before Rotem and I finalized our wedding plans for Israel, there was one person I needed to confirm was coming, and that was my grandpa. Things were getting hard for him, and I was a bit nervous to have the conversation. In true Pete fashion, he said, "Of course, Dolly, if you're getting married in Israel, I'll be there." And he was there. He taught me how important marriage is and to laugh and have fun with each other. He would have cute little jokes with Grandma. When we would eat breakfast in Aruba, he whispered to Grandma, "Let's bet 25 cents that Melissa's gonna ask for a bite of rice." And lo and behold, I always asked. And then he would look at Grandma and say, "You owe me a quarter," and then another quarter, and another quarter. I don't know if it was the rice I liked or watching them flirt with one another. Most importantly, he taught me how to love. He filled our lives with so much love and laughter. Even as he got older and his dementia started to kick in, he still shined as a great-grandfather to Shai, Bar, and Liv. He did whatever he could to make sure that they knew he loved him. He would play catch with them, make faces at them, make them laugh. He did whatever he was capable of doing just to make them smile. He made us all feel so special all the time. Pete, I love you more. And this time I win, even though you always won, because you always wanted me to know that you loved me more. I love you more.
I love you, Pete.
Thank you.
Hearing all these stories and memories of Pete brought this poem to mind. When I die, give what's left of me away to children and those that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give to them what you need to give to me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known, in the people I've loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not only your mind. You can love me most by letting hands touch bodies and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die. People do. So in all that's left of me is love. Give me away. In a moment, I'm going to ask that everyone who's able rises for our final prayer of the service, the El Malei Rachamim prayer. Following that, we'll ask for the pallbearers to come forward, but please to get your coats first. I've heard it's cold outside. And then we'll let the family follow the casket, and we can make our ways to cars for those of us who are going to the cemetery to line up as per the instructions that we received, or to meet up at Shiva later on. In loving memory of Sheldon Pete Pollack, I ask everyone please to rise. El Malei Rachamim, שוכן במרומים. המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, עם קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת סער בן בתיה שהלך לעולמו. בעל הרחמים יסתרהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence to Sheldon Pete Pollack, who has entered eternity. God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal. Eternity is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us all say, Amen.